Hey, Ben.
Hi, Jesse. I saw that you got Corey's message.
I did. I'm so sorry for him.
Yeah, whatever it is, I hope he's doing all right. And thank you for being willing to take on chair duties.
I'm happy to do that. Sorry for Corey.
What happened?
He just emailed us 5 minutes ago saying there's a family emergency or personal emergency, and he's not able to make the meeting.
Oh, yeah. Keep our fingers crossed. I had a chat with Bob Giordano yesterday. For a while we met, and interesting. I'm assuming, I think he's going to make it today.
He should be. He definitely
Ben, you look like you're ready to join the Grateful Dead.
I don't know if they ever had hair this long.
Yeah.
You know, Bobby had that little tiny ponytail. Mickey Hart might have too.
There you go.
Chris, you're outside with a beverage? That seems pretty nice.
Yeah, that's right. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah, my wife and I are actually in Arizona right now. We're going to be here for the month. She's working on her pilot's license. So we're looking for better weather than Montana has to offer for about 4 weeks, and then we'll be back.
I bet so. That's a mode of transportation that we don't talk too much about at this meeting.
Yeah.
Flying. Maybe we should incorporate it.
Well, maybe a bike trail to the airport. We'll work on that first.
Okay, well, we had a quorum and then James left.
It looks like 1, 2, 3. I see 5 people, so I think that you might still. Right? Britt, Kip.
Looks like Britt's trying to connect.
Chris, Jean, and Jesse.
Oh, wait, there's Jessica. She's trying to join. Okay. I see the connecting people down there. So maybe looks like Jessica's on there. Britt is on there. Okay. All right. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 3:01 p.m. Corey couldn't be here because of a personal emergency, and we sent him our best thoughts. Let's see. In attendance is me, Jessica Tuberty, Jessica Doherty, Kip Beckwith, Britt Arnson, James Walter. Who did I miss? I think that's it. Eugene, did I say your name?
No.
Eugene Schmitz. Okay. So I hope you guys had time to read the previous minutes. There were ones from December and ones from January. So we need to approve those previous minutes unless anyone has objections. So hearing none, we'll approve the minutes from last time. Are there any general public comments? I'm going to check to see if there's anyone in the waiting room. Sometimes I'm given this thing to read. I wasn't given that today. Ben, is that okay that I didn't read the thing for public comment?
I think so. Okay. Maybe Ashley can post it. Ashley Strayer is going to be taking over our admin duties, I believe. Again, the shift from our office from development services over to public works means that there's been some shift in some of those duties. And so thank you, Ashley. So Ashley, even though Soraya was sending out emails related to this meeting, I believe Ashley is going to be taking over from here on out. There might be some push and pull as, some back and forth as this transition continues and people get brought up to speed. But yeah, welcome, Ashley. Thank you.
Okay, and so I can see that she's shared her screen. Do I need to read what's there or?
Excuse me, Jess, Bob Giordano, I think, has his hand up. Maybe it's for you asked for a comment.
I don't see any hands up.
Oh, it's showing up on my screen.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's the instructions for raising your hand for public comment. You can dial in while in the webinar in Zoom, press 9 to raise your hand, press 9 again to lower your hand. Oh, I see him now. Bob Giordano is down at the bottom with his raised hand. So I don't know what to do now from my end, but I'm happy for Bob to make general public comments. If I can have assistance from everyone, I'm not sure what I need to do to make it happen.
Might just be a touch screen.
Well, he's a attendee, not a panelist, so I don't do. Bob, are you called in?
I see him. Wait a minute. I think I can get him.
There should be an option to allow to speak. If you put your mouse over Bob's name, it has to be one of the meeting hosts to do that.
Okay, I can see his name and I clicked on it and it says lower hand, change role to panelist, rename or remove.
Oh.
I have allow to talk on mine, so let me do that.
Okay,
yeah, then it might
that would be good.
For you to manage that on the meeting.
Allow to talk is not available because Bob is using an older version of Zoom. You need to promote Bob to a panelist to talk.
Okay, I will promote him. Hold on one second. Okay.
All right, Bob, you're there. Did you have something to say?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I joined on to for the discussion a little later on that Gene has brought forward, but I do have a 2-minute public comment. I want to share my screen. Is that possible?
It should be now that you're a panelist. Do you see the green? Do you see the button at the bottom that's green and says share screen?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to hit yes. Ooh. Is my screen showing up?
Nope.
Nope, not right now. Maybe try it again.
Let me hit desktop.
And then you might need to click another. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
It's still, there we go.
You see my email. That will tell you that.
Yes, we see your
okay.
email.
Okay. Oh, this green button's in the way of something here. Aha, move to bottom. Okay. Hi, Bike Ped Board. My name's Bob Giordano. I've been directing Free Cycles and Missoula Institute for Sustainable Transportation for about 25 years. And I just have a couple comments of kind of aspirational for the city. I'm going to start with just a couple, and I'll keep this to under 3 minutes. There's a lot of trail connections in this city that are just waiting to happen, and most of them are on the city's radar, but we need people to keep pushing on these, like this Riverfront Trail. Does my cursor show up?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Trail from Van Buren to Madison. We have about a dozen key connections in this community that are just waiting to happen. We need people to speak up. We need to get our shovels out. We need to do funding. We need to make it happen. Some that you may not think of, whenever I see a grade change, you know where this is? South 2nd Street, good food stores on the other side. There's about a dozen places in town where the road goes up and back down. Those are perfect places for undercrossings, so a trail doesn't have to dip down into a hole. Although the Russell Street kind of hole, that came out pretty good, that Old Milwaukee undercrossing. But there's a lot of places in town that going under a road would be very easy, and generally under is better than going over. You only have to go down 10 feet versus going over 20. Let's see what my next tab is. Greenways, awesome. Let's do it. I really want to see in the neighborhood greenway handbook or toolkit that we do diverters, and we keep in some locations drivers from cutting through, but you have little bike ped passageways. And sometimes it can be bollards, and you can have a pedestrian plaza in the middle of the street. Just signage, it's a good start, but it really doesn't reach our full potential. Signage is good, traffic circle is good, Sharrow is good, but these diverters really can enhance bike ped travelway. Okay, I'm gonna show a couple other pictures here. Bike lanes. It's really tough when they're between parked cars in the travel lane. You get them full of snow and ice, they get plowed, but the snow and ice comes right back in. Ruts freeze. You really can't bike on this, and drivers think you can. Here's another bike lane. This is in mid-January. It wasn't a big snow, but that bike lane is fairly unusable. Mud. It's about 1 inch of mud here. You really can't bike in that. It's a bit degrading. So we're a big fan of cycle tracks, otherwise known as protected bike lanes. Here's a cycle track right here in North Higgins, mid-January. Little snow, but it doesn't have the mud, the ice, the gunk. You clean it once, and it's pretty well taken care of. This cycle track, we have one cycle track in town, not counting the Maurice bi-directional block one. This is North Higgins. Best practice is not to have the cycle track come out into the main road like this, is to keep it straight. So here's an opportunity coming very quickly, front and main. There's a lot of momentum behind getting that shovel ready for any kind of stimulus. We think it's critical that we have cycle tracks as shown here in the downtown master plan on Main Street especially, maybe front, but main, both ways. That means we probably can't do diagonal parking. And I talked to Ellen Buchanan at MRA about this, and she's a little hesitant. She thinks some businesses may want the angle parking, but the movement of people on a really great facility on bikes should trump, I shouldn't use that word, should override the a few parking places. Here's another spot, the Higgins Bridge. This is what it's going to look like when it's done. But there's momentum behind a 4-3 or a 4-2 or some other configuration on the hip strip. We won't need these 4 lanes for the Higgins Bridge. So what we like to talk about, and we'll talk a lot about it during the process, is making this a pedestrian way and then having these outside lanes being a protected cycle track. In general, we support 4 to 3 lane conversions. This 3 lane here has better turning movements for cars, bike facilities, and the pedestrian crossing is so much safer. Roundabouts. We don't have a great roundabout, I'm sorry to say, in Missoula. We have about 15 modern roundabouts. The rest are neighborhood circles. See this angle? See how people can speed on all these curvatures here? Same thing with the Van Buren. People can speed around this corner. Let me show you a Dutch roundabout, and this is my last slide. All right, you have a single lane roundabout, a cycle track, a pedestrian way. See how these angles, it's called the angle of deflection. A driver cannot speed through this turn. They have to really make a right-hand turn. So we just are always engaged. Free Cycles is helping people fix bikes. Even during the pandemic, we're getting a lot of bikes out to people, but MIST is working towards sustainable transportation with an emphasis on walk, bike, and transit. So I really appreciate the work you all do in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's always great to hear from you, and we really appreciate your organization and what you've done for the community, and always such great ideas. So thanks for being here. We really appreciate that. Before we move forward, I'm just going to see if there's anyone else on my list. Can you guys see anyone else? I don't see anyone else. Okay. Seeing no other public here to comment, let's move on to general board comments. This is the time where you can let people know what's going on with you, new projects, new thoughts, things coming up. Okay, I'm going to make one comment, and that's because we spent a lot of time making our work plan, and I would like just to give a heads up that according to the work plan and calendar, next month will be the small grant presentation for available grants that the city or county is seeing come across that board members might be interested in applying for on behalf of the bike board. And then the bike month preparations begin next month is March, if you can believe it or not, bike month being in May. And so just to remind everybody that those are the two pretty big items on the calendar for March. And then let's see, Eugene has his hand up. Go ahead, Eugene.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Jess. Yeah, just, and I don't know, I think I forwarded it out because I got an email about a week and a half ago from Doug Haberman from Bike Walk Montana, and there was a House bill coming up labeled bike safety. And I know that the Bike Walk Montana, and I know Ben works with them, put together a list of things they did and did not like. So I'm just, I just want to kind of put a thing out to the other board members, because I'm assuming we're all interested in promoting safer and more convenient bicycling. Some of these issues that come from a, let's face it, conservative legislature, sometimes don't get or don't accept the input from bicycling community very easily. And some of the things that have happened in the past are sort of thinly veiled ways actually to make bicycling less attractive by requiring certain stickers, or in this case, extra kind of lighting and special clothing for people riding during daytime. They're asking for lights during daytime, although I think they're dropping that. So I just want to encourage the members of the board to check in and sign up or get on the Bike Walk Montana newsletter if possible, because they usually get pretty good information out about that kind of thing. So that's it for my general comment today. Thanks.
Thanks, Dean. I want to just add to that a little bit. The bill made it out of the House. The daytime light requirement did get dropped. The amount of reflective material that they want to require bicyclists to have on their bodies got shrunk from 400 inches to 200 inches, and that's on roads with 35 mile an hour or greater speed limits. They want you to wear reflective material. That language also got modified to include bicycling jerseys or other athletic wear. It doesn't have to just be a hunter vest or like a safety vest. And then they also added language about requiring motorists to pass bicyclists with 5 feet of space, which is something that especially the road riding and touring bike communities have been asking for several legislative sessions. And so that has made it into the bill too. So there's some, from our perspective, there's some good things and there's some questionable things. Another element that is kind of sneaky, they removed the ability to ride 2 abreast on a multi-lane roadway, which is really questionable in our minds being the city, because there's a safety benefit to being able to pass a shorter amount of, to be able to pass in a shorter distance Whereas if you have a long line of single file riders, you have to drive in oncoming traffic for a much longer amount of time. So it really seems like a cut off your nose to spite your face sort of change in the code. But we're going to continue advocating for the changes that we want to see. And that by we, I mean city there, we're tracking the bills and forwarding on staff comments to city's lobbyists there.
Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, just on that two abreast thing, it was successfully challenged. I forget where else, but it was a similar thing that, well, right now the new bill is bicyclists can operate in the right half of the right lane instead of the entire right lane, which is kind of a little weird. But there was the thing, I think it may have been in California or something, and say you can't ride two abreast, but a single rider can ride anywhere in the lane. And the argument went, well, if somebody's riding in the middle of the lane, if another person is riding to his or her right, how does that affect the ability of a motor vehicle to pass both of them? And it really doesn't. So, I mean, they put it in, but it's pretty hard to argue for. And again, maybe down the road it can get removed. So just wanted to bring that up.
The other big thing is that it will prevent any sort of racing on streets if you prevent multiple bike riders riding two abreast, which is an economic driver for the state.
All right, anybody else have comments about those topics? All right, then we are ready to move on to comments from city staff.
Okay, I don't have, well, I do have some few comments, but I want to get to the bulk of our discussion first. I also want to take advantage of Aaron being here early in the meeting to help provide some clarification about the role of the MPO and the Community Transportation Safety Plan in the discussion that Jean wants to have about bike safety and getting that heads up. So I'd like to move, if possible, I'd like to move that item from the agenda that we have under, I believe, new business to now, and then pick up the rest of our discussion items after that.
Sounds like it works great.
Does that work for you, Jean? Putting you on the spot here?
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Okay.
Oh, so you're going to tie me in with Aaron?
Well, I want Aaron to be able to weigh in on this discussion, and he has to leave before too long because there's, I want to just be as clear as possible about what, how the city is already planning to, I think, do some of what you're asking. And so I just want to make sure that we are coordinating rather than duplicating efforts here.
Okay, well, I hadn't heard, I was waiting for Aaron to speak, and I thought he was going to go over some
No,
things.
Gene, I'd like you to introduce your memo. We attached it to the agenda. I hope that everyone had a chance to read it, but I'd like you to introduce that and talk a little bit more about what you're seeing and what you're thinking.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I don't have the memo on my screen up in front of me because I didn't really know how to do that, and my printer is messed up. So, but I think hopefully everybody's read it. And basically what it comes down to is looking over some of the crash from the last 2 or 3 years that Bob Giordano kind of did a little digging into with Sergeant Welch, the public information officer from Missoula Police Department. And there's a couple of things that stuck out to me. I'll just give 2 of them. One was an incident, I think everybody remembers it, with a young woman that got hit on Higgins. And to the best of my knowledge, even though police report hasn't been made public yet, apparently, is that she said she was headed north on Higgins, but she was not on the street, and there's no bike lane. So, and she got struck by a vehicle exiting the gas station, which is on the west side of Higgins by 4th. So the only place she could have been was on the sidewalk. And the way I envision this is that the story I got is that she was getting ready to ride past this SUV that was getting ready to pull out, and it was partially blocking the sidewalk. So since it was stopped, she decided to go around it in front of it. And of course, the person driving it was looking back north away from her direction because she was south of him. He was looking north for other vehicles, and when he saw that there was a clear spot in traffic, he pulled out, and then she went under the vehicle and got dragged for almost half a block. So that was one situation where you might be able to say that if we had the changed infrastructure on Higgins, she wouldn't be riding on the sidewalk in the first place, but I don't know that we can ever guarantee that. I know a lot of people just have that extra built-in security of riding on sidewalks, and I don't think there's going to be a ban on sidewalk riding anytime soon because it just gets kind of sticky. So here's the deal. I think we need to, through some type of promotion, I don't know if it's a webinar or putting out more videos like the What's Wrong with the Picture videos that are going on, or there's a thing from a new thing with the League of American Bicyclists. They have a whole group of education things that they've put out, and they're free to the public now. I can get you, Ben, you probably have the link already. We can get it out to people. But so what happens is we need to let the bicycling community know that if they are biking in a bike lane or biking on a sidewalk, or for some reason they're in different situations, we need to get a message out, I believe, to them to recognize situations that put them in potential jeopardy. The one I just described is one of them. The other one was a situation where somebody was riding on the sidewalk on Broadway, and he was riding up by, I think it's Latimer Street. It's the signalized crossing that's about halfway to when you get to the Reserve Street underpass. And there was a vehicle waiting to make a left turn on a green light, and the bicyclist was riding on the sidewalk north, also on a green passenger light. And since the bicyclist was coming from behind the vehicle prepping to turn left, the driver didn't see that bicyclist, and the timing was perfect, apparently, where the driver made the left turn and the bicyclist came right into him. So it's sort of a mirror image of a right hook. Again, neither one of these was fatal crashes, but they certainly could have been. So part of my idea is to kind of, as part of what we do for bicyclists, is to let them know that, if you're riding under certain conditions and you get to certain places, these are things to look out for. We have the nice new raised bike lane on Russell, new construction laid out, but we still have these places where, like Bob showed earlier, you get to an intersection and now the bike lane kind of swoops down to the traffic area again to share with vehicle traffic as a regular bike lane to go through the intersection. And again, that kind of sets people up for a right hook because these drivers can be even a little bit less attentive to the bicyclists who were essentially riding up off the curbing on the sidewalk, and now they kind of get quickly reintroduced to street level again, and it kind of keeps them a little bit out of sight, out of mind for motorists, even more so than if they were in a regular bike lane. There's no perfect answer, I don't think, to these situations, but I like to get something going where we can get information out to a broad spectrum of the riding public, where they're going to be interested in finding out about this, that they don't have to come and pick up a brochure or attend a class somewhere that we put on, where they come in and sit down for 45 minutes and we put stuff up on a screen and show them. So I like to have something that people can access from their computers at their leisure, go through it, and then when they're done, have some type of enticement like Missoula in Motion uses. And I talked this over with Catherine. She said that could be done, where people come and take, whether it's a webinar or a set of videos or something, and we can record that they've essentially attended, maybe answered a few questions at the end, and then they're kind of put onto their regular Missoula in Motion goodie list that they have every month of freebies that go out. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'd like to put together a working group of anywhere from 3, 4, maybe even 5 people, hopefully another member of the bike board. I was hoping to get somebody maybe like Aaron, because he works with the university, I think, or used to. So I'd like to get something that it would be, we can get out to university students. Again, Bob Giordano says he's interested in putting something together as far as a curriculum and a methodology. So that's basically it. I'd like to have, the board kind of say, yeah, this is a good idea. We'd like to hear what proposals a working group comes up with in 2 or 3 months, maybe, after looking through what we may have available and what it would take in terms of, manpower and money and whatever. Again, maybe get one of these small grants to help out, put it together and bring something back to the board for discussion and approval in 2 or 3 months.
Thanks, Gene. I think it's a good idea and one that I don't want to get in the way of your enthusiasm and excitement to work on this. At the same time, I would just want to make sure that we're kind of, again, having the best use of everyone's time and efforts. And so I just wanted to also bring to the board's attention the Community Transportation Safety Plan. There have been presentations on it in the past, but it's something that some of the newer board members might not be as familiar with. This plan was adopted in 2019. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And so this is the CTSP. That's the acronym I'm going to use from now on, the Community Transportation Safety Plan. This was an update in 2019, like I said, from the original plan that was written and adopted in 2013. This plan looks at all of the crash data in the area and identifies several emphasis areas to focus on. The 2019 plan, after combing through all of the data, landed on 3 emphasis areas. One of them is intersections. Another one is risky behaviors. That includes unbelted occupants, intoxicated driving, speeding, impaired driving, occupant protection, things like that. And then the third emphasis area is non-motorized crashes. And so each of these emphasis areas is kind of tasked with, or the plan suggests that the way to address these emphasis areas is to create working teams around each of them. And so we just, with COVID and with just the amount of work, sheer work that we have going on, we have yet to assemble a non-motorized emphasis area team, but it's been something that Aaron and I have been talking about for a while, and Gene's memo really kind of is lighting the fire under us to get that team up and running. So we had always planned on having at least a member of the Bike Ped Board. We can't have more than 4 or else it would be a quorum of the Bike Ped Board. But if there are multiple people who are interested in being a part of the non-motorized team, we would certainly welcome people to come to those meetings. Those will typically be during business hours, during weekdays, somewhere between 9 and 5. We recognize that that's not always doable for everyone. And I could easily see education as a major component, a major strategy. And I'm going to scroll down through to non-motorized users strategies. Improve non-motorist safety through design practices and new technologies. And then there's a bunch of actions that could include education through apps and video. And then also provide education opportunities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists about safe and lawful behavior and interactions. And so there is, we are being tasked, these are stakeholders that are already being included. Missoula in Motion, Free Cycles, Pedal Missoula potentially, the ambassadors, my role, the statewide bike ped coordinator, public schools, the bike ped board probably should have been listed on that when this was written. But this committee, once we establish this committee, following through on these actions will be the goal of that committee. And I could see what Gene is asking for fitting really nicely into this. And then you'd have the full kind of support of potentially of law enforcement and other city staff to help provide as much data as we have on this to really make sure that we're targeting the issues that are leading to severe crashes around town. And so I guess, Gene, I'd ask for just a little bit more patience from us to get this committee up and running. And of course, what we will definitely invite you and any other bike ped board member who wants to attend, again, as long as it's fewer than 5. And if there's more than that have an interest, then maybe we will, I don't know, thumb wrestle or something to see who gets to go. But we want this committee to be successful, and we really hope that what you're the ideas that you have, that you and others will run with those outside of the meetings that we have to really help develop some of the materials that you were talking about. Aaron, do you have more to add about that, or can you frame it better or simpler than I did?
No, I don't think so. I think big picture, we have this safety plan, and it is very comprehensive, and there was a lot of work that went into it in terms of evaluating crashes and where they're occurring and what the underlying circumstances are for those. And so from that data, we've developed these emphasis areas, and within those strategies and actions. And so we sort of have a roadmap for how we want to move forward to address safety for each of these. And hold on, let me grab my volume sometimes shifts down. Let me know if I get too quiet. So I think it would be helpful to stay organized around this plan. And I think it would give us a framework to start addressing a lot of what you're talking about, Gene, in, across a number of different factors. The other piece that I think is really critical on the safety plan and how we form these committees is that there will be overlap between each of the different emphasis area teams. So as Ben mentioned, we have an intersection team and we have a risky behavior team, and we want to make sure that the work that we're doing addressing all 3 of those emphasis areas is really consistent when there is that potential for overlap. A good example is we know a lot of the bike and pedestrian crashes are happening at intersections. And so we want the work that the non-motorized emphasis area, the work that they're doing and focused on, really ties into and communicates to the work that we're doing around intersections, and there will be a fair amount of overlap. So I think it's a good opportunity. As Ben said, we've been wanting to get this committee emphasis area team up and running. This is a really good time to, I think, Gene, your memo is reminding us that we need to do that. And I think the timing is good. We have some projects that are wrapping up, and we can start working on it. And I see that being a really good opportunity too, to sort of bring ideas back to this board for further discussion, and having a good opportunity to have liaisons between that committee and the other folks like law enforcement and engineers who might be involved in it, and this board. So there could be an opportunity for developing some ideas and discussion and ideas to bring back to this board and create those solutions. So all that said, feels like a good opportunity to sort of dive into this, and that might be the venue, Gene, to really tackle what you're hoping to. I think that's my perspective.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, like I said, at this point, I think the first step through the doorway or whatever is to put more than one head together, and sort of look over some of the resources for bike education from different parts of the country and different avenues, like the American Bicycle Education Association, League of American Bicyclists. They all have some good materials out there, and just sort of try to put together a curriculum in terms of what we really need, the information put together in a organized fashion, and then kind of come up with what type of modality we'd like to do, with the idea of, again, reaching a broad spectrum of people, young, old, middle, people who've been biking for a month, people who've been biking for 40 years. Try to get all those people access to it, not only just access to it, but generated interest where they're sort of, use the carrot and get some rewards out for people who do it, to try to get a higher ratio of the bicycling community up to speed, no pun intended, in terms of good practices, regardless of whether they're on the road, on a bike path, on a sidewalk, etc. So I think the idea being get a few people put together in a working group, and then maybe ready to come up with some things to bring to the CTSP group, for whether it's a non-motorized or intersection or both.
As far as next steps go, Ben, would this be something that if board members are interested in being on this committee, they would email you and let them know that they're interested? And then what would the timeline be? And what would the anticipated obligation for the committee be?
Good question. So if people know that they're interested now, they can just let me know right now. I'm actually taking notes and making a list of everyone who I need to invite to this meeting. I hope to have this meeting invite out within a couple weeks for a meeting, hopefully within a month. I'll probably send a doodle poll out to see, or some sort of polling to see what works for everybody. And then my guess is that the larger group will probably meet bi-monthly or quarterly, whereas but there could be individual work groups within that are like actively pursuing some of the things that Jean wants to do, whether it's doing research or actually developing curriculum, or that could take on more duties. But my guess is that we're looking at like a 90-minute meeting every other month or quarterly for the larger group, with some potential work in between that to do, a few hours of work in between that.
Thanks, Ben. I noticed there's a hand up at the bottom of my screen for D. Gray, who's not in the meeting, but is, I assume, like a public comment. Can you see it?
Yep, Dave he's a staff member also, so I'm going to allow him to talk. He helped with the CTSP. I'm going to click allow to talk. Dave, you should be allowed to talk.
I'm the coordinator of the CTSP for the MPO, and so it's a little bit more deep than that. We meet quarterly for the intersection meetings. And then if Ben wants to step in and set up meetings for non-motorized, I'm totally behind him on that. That's awesome. Thank you, Ben. And for anybody who's interested, we do it quarterly. So our next intersection meeting is coming up here in February. Then we've got a Transportation Safety Advisory Committee, a TSAC meeting that meets every 6 months, basically. And because of COVID, we've been pretty hampered by all of that. And Jean, I'm glad that you're still interested in all of it, because I know you've participated in the intersection safety, and thank you very much for that. So with non-motorized, we just move forward with it, because and Jean, I think you've had access to the links for the resources that have been provided through MDT and bike ped, all of that. So whichever way you're going to move forward, then that's fine. You know, it's all good. And that's really all I have to say is we're going to meet for intersection safety in February. I'm glad that you're talking about this non-motorized emphasis area group, and thank you for your interest.
Jessica Doherty Goodburn has been very patient, so I would like to take her comments before anybody else goes. Sorry, Jessica.
No problem. This is kind of a secondary thought also. I just wondering within the working groups whether there are any focused on education, safety education for motorized travel as well, and especially as it relates to non-motor travel. I think that definitely great to educate cyclists. Infrastructure improvements are really good, but obviously changing the culture around drivers and how to look for bikes and where they expect to see them would also be helpful.
Yeah, if I might just respond. I think the quick response to that I would have, Jessica, is that when we talk about education, we should be talking comprehensively about, you know, if we're doing bike ped safety education, that it should be for motorists. You know, we should identify what needs to be targeted at motorists in terms of safety and recognition and bicycle laws and all of that, just like we need to emphasize safe behavior on the part of bicyclists and pedestrians. So I think, you know, that's all part of developing that strategy and making sure that we're targeting the information to the people we knew who need to hear it based on those strategies. So yes, I think that's part of it.
Jean, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just quick to what Jessica had said. The League of American Bicyclists has put out, I think it came out of Fort Collins, Colorado, originally, called the Bicycle Friendly Driver Program. And they started out going out to commercial drivers, fleet drivers, like the bus drivers and delivery truck people from different places, to kind of give a emphasis towards how to operate more safely and more friendly around bicyclists, how to look for them, how to, you know, passing distance and being aware of some of the things where a bike might swerve around a pothole and, you know, to give extra space. So there is that. So I don't know if we can be, you know, that can be something that's maybe brought up along with that. And that was basically it. David made a comment regarding me, I think, saying that I had access to these resources. I did see them up, I think, Ben, from what you had on the screen. So I'll go back and look into those, but I wasn't exactly sure what Dave was suggesting in terms of, you know, these are resources we should, or me or a working group should be looking at, or what. So I don't need to deal with that right now. I can get in touch with him later, I think.
I think I've sent out links to the plan before to the board members, but it's easily available at MissoulaMPO.com. You look under plans and it's there, the Community Transportation Safety Plan.
Thank you.
I really quick just want to say that, yeah, Gene, that sort of thing, the driver stuff is explicit, and Jessica, the driver stuff is explicitly called out in the plan. You know, it's not just educating bicyclists and pedestrians, but educating drivers as well. Driver's ed is called out. The bicycle friendly driver program is great. And I've talked to the Fort Collins people a little bit. Fort Collins is a city that's less than twice the size of Missoula, and my office over there has 4 employees in it, and I'm just one. So there's a little bit of a resource difference between our two communities. So it's something that we can certainly look at, but it's something that we just haven't had the ability to implement yet.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. I would be willing to serve on the committee. So you can put my name down. Anyone else who wants to tell Ben right now, great. Otherwise, you can shoot him an email after you've had time to think about it. I mean, we have this whole city fleet of vehicles and drivers of those vehicles. And so I feel like part of our job is to advise the city about what we think would be helpful. And so part of what the committee could do would be suggesting things like bicycle friendly driving certifications for the city fleet drivers. Something like that would be, actionable advisory opinion. And so if you're interested in that kind of thing, that would be great. Aaron's got his hand up. What do you want to say, Aaron?
Oh, I was just gonna, one last thing that between now and when we get the emphasis area committee going, I think if the board wanted to focus some energy, subcommittee or a group of board members wanted to do some preliminary research or gather some ideas, I'd maybe just point you to that, look through that emphasis area in the safety plan and see what the strategies and actions are, and then think about what the board's role might be related to those. That would be really helpful, I think, to bring to that first meeting, or just to have that pre-work done. So that would be a way to get started and not have to wait until we're up and running, and would bring those valuable resources and information.
And then Ben, could you maybe send that link to all of us? Just maybe, because it's hard in a meeting, when you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that website before, but then later, after dinner, you forget what it was. I think it might be helpful for people if they want to take a look at that safety plan again and be reminded. That would be nice.
Done. Just emailed it to y'all.
Awesome. And then let's see. A lot of hands are still up. Aaron's hands up, and then Gray's hands are up. Hands up.
I'm good. Thanks.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Dave, you got more stuff?
If I'm up, we have an entire set of files that are on our FTP for resource documents on the what we've done on education so far. And it would be good to review that. And Ben's been part of it, and I'll share that with you. But and with the hope that we don't have to redo a whole bunch of things. And we've touched base with I guess a PBS film developer before COVID started, as far as having a public animated thing for kids, and a number of different avenues. So I'm going to send that link out to the FTP site. And that's the one I was talking about, Gene, that you had access to previously and still do. But yeah, so we can figure out just exactly where our educational elements are and how we can make them better.
Dave, the easiest way to send that out, if you just send an email to bpab@ci.missoula.mt.us, it will go to everyone on the board.
Okay, well,
if you can send out that link.
Yeah, shoot me that link and I'll get there. All right, thank you guys.
Any other comments? I know Bob is still on. I don't know how it works. Do you have a comment, or do we take comments from the public after he said he wanted to be here for this part of the presentation? So I don't know. He's not answering. Okay. Anybody else want to talk about the new subcommittee? Nope. Okay. In that case, I think we should roll back to the to Ben and either address the old business with the draft project list or any new comments that you have.
I want to do my staff comments before we then spend the rest of the meeting talking about the draft project list.
Okay.
As this board has seen in recent meetings, You've seen presentations on a few plans, and I just wanted to share some progress on those. Highway 200, the final draft for the Highway 200 plan is just getting ready to go out for the final public review and then adoption within, I believe there's going to be a presentation at TTAC and TPCC this month, and they're shooting for adoption in March. And so that plan, again, I haven't done a line-by-line comparison from the last draft that you saw to this one, but I know that they took all of our comments into consideration anyway and tried to address them as best they could. And so as soon as you see a public link for that, I advise you to look and weigh in privately. There will not be another presentation of the bike ped board on it, but because it has, you've seen the recommended kind of alternatives and the draft of the plan. They, like I said, that was pretty close to final. They were making some tweaks based on what comments were submitted. But the again, and there will be a public available comment, but I'm not sure that the window will align with our board meeting schedule. The long range transportation plan, they're starting to incorporate all the comments that they received in the last kind of public engagement round, the meeting here at the bike ped board in December, the various neighborhood meetings, and then the month or 6 weeks of open public comment. They have some direction and are really moving into a draft document. We're likely to see something in March. I don't know if it will be in time for the March meeting, but we're expecting an April adoption of that at the earliest is my guess. And so we will try and get a final plan back in front of the bike ped board at a meeting if we can. If not, I will certainly send out links to that document for the board to review the final document of that. And again, it might just be a timing thing, but we're going to try really hard to get that to work, to get in front of this board. The build grant, which is the area, the collection of streets outside of Reserve and between Mullen and Broadway. We've seen 90% drawings now for the streets there. We had 2 weeks to review at city staff level, which is extremely fast for hundreds of pages of technical engineering documents, but we're getting through it. Again, the compressed timeline on this is due to the requirements of the federal grant, and we're really going to be pushing up against that. So it's moving really fast. In general, the concept of raised protected bike lanes, that as Bob showed at the very beginning, they don't bend back towards the travel lane. They stay straight or even bend a little bit away in a more European style. Those design elements are being carried through on the main roads, which are George Elmer, Mary Jane Boulevard, and England Boulevard. There are sections of both George Elmer and Mary Jane and ultimately England that are already built and don't quite meet those standards. We're not ripping out curb and rebuilding those. And in those sections, we're going to have buffered bike lanes that still have delineator posts. So there's still some amount of vertical separation between bike riders and driving vehicles. And so we're pretty confident that these designs are going to represent about as best practices as we're able to get in Missoula at this point, considering all of the stormwater challenges out there, winter maintenance challenges, fall maintenance challenges with leaf collection. It's really been an interesting process, if not fully transparent to the public. It's been a very interesting process at a staff level. I've never seen this level of coordination among the various subdivisions of public works and parks and development services to really make this project look as good as it can be. And so I'm pretty excited about that. And then finally, Russell Street, the next phase, MDT is just getting ready to kick that off. And so the city has had a couple internal meetings to start to look at the roll plot, which is widely available on MDT's webpage. If you just Google MDT Russell Street, you can find it pretty easily, and you can see what their very basic preliminary design for the next phases looks like. And so we're starting to identify challenges that we see within the roll plot and kind of put our heads together as to what might need addressing in the next step of design. And we look forward to working closely with MDT and their consultant WGM on that. And then in slightly further away projects, this is one that Bob brought up, 2 opportunities that are coming forward. The front main conversion, that's a project that the Missoula Redevelopment Agency initiated a study of back in 2013 or 14. They hired HDR engineering to do an analysis, not just a traffic analysis, but also an economic analysis and safety analysis of converting front and main from between Orange and Madison from one-way to two-way. That found that it was feasible, that there could be some improvements in mobility for people biking and walking and driving, because you're not circling blocks looking for parking necessarily, or missing your destination. It could reduce speeds, travel speeds, which encourages some lingering viewing of the businesses, and it even projected up to a conservative estimate of a 13% boon to businesses on those corridors. And so they're finally the districts, the URD, the urban renewal districts that span the length of the project, have enough money in them that they're getting to the point where they're going to go out to bid for some construction documents and get those kind of conceptual designs that they've already studied closer to a build package to see. I will of course bring that to the board as we get to once a consultant is hired, we'll bring that to the board at the appropriate stages in the process. And then as of today, I believe, the RFP for studying Higgins between Broadway and Brooks is open. And so that will be open for about a month. We're soliciting contractors, consultants nationally to look at that, to identify to bring the concepts that have been in the long range plans and in the downtown master plan for years, to bring those closer to reality. So it's still planning level, it's not engineering level, but it's, rather than just here's several pretty pictures of what could be, it's going to be working with all the stakeholders to identify this is exactly what we want to build, and here's how it's going to work, and this is what it's going to look like. And so the big step, the first step of that is identifying what all of the challenges are and what are the goals of the project. And so that's going to be kind of the big, once a consultant's on board, that is going to be the first push, is engaging with everyone that we can find about what's working well and what is not working well in that corridor, and then we'll start looking into, well, what are the ways that we can solve it. And so again, that will certainly involve the Bike Ped Board, either as having an individual member as part of an advisory committee of some kind to that plan, and there will be some regular updates at the Bike Ped Board as that plan moves forward. There's probably other things that we've been working on, but those are the ones that have taken the bulk of my time in the past few days. So those are what's been on my mind. Any questions about any of those projects?
It's amazing to see them all coming to the end, sort of like getting close, that we've been talking about for quite some time. So it's a good feeling, and I'm sure you're also really glad. So it's exciting to see what happens next.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else have any comments? I don't see any hands up. Let me look. Okay. Oh, Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Ben and Bob Giordano had the picture up of the, I think front or main, I think it's Front Street. thing. It looked really nice. But one thing that kind of popped up to me, and again, I guess I'm one of these, Debbie Downer sometimes on things. I look for the worst case scenario. I look at the bike boxes, and the only one I'm familiar with really currently is the one on southbound Arthur, where there's a left turn towards campus right on, I think it's 6th. Anyhow, and it's a signalized intersection. So my concern is somebody comes up on the bike lane and then there's the bike box there, which allows them to make a lateral move over so they're ready to make a left turn from essentially the traffic lane. They've kind of gotten to the head of the line of the motor vehicle traffic. And what concerns me is somebody coming up to that right edge of the bike box and moving over to the left, and they start to move over just as the traffic gets a green light. And if the driver had their nose in their phone or something like that, that they don't take off right as the cyclist is starting to thinking they have time to move over. So that's a concern of mine with bike boxes. So I just wanted to put that in there. Don't know if there's any way of working around it, but again, if I see somebody using one, if I have a chance, I remind them to say, make sure you're there early enough so that you're not making your move over into the bike box right as the light's getting ready to change.
Thanks, Gene. I think there's a lot of emerging best practices around bike boxes, and I'm not sure the one at 6th and Madison is representative of those anymore, but it's something that we would certainly look much closer at when we get to design phase of is it needed, and will it serve its purpose, and will it what are any unintended consequences of putting one in.
All right, anyone else? Okay, looks like it's time for the Public Works draft project list discussion.
Okay, I apologize. I don't have too much more to add from last month, but last month we didn't make it all the way down the list and we felt pretty hurried. And so I'm wondering if anyone had more time to think about these projects, ride or drive along them, and think about what is, what they might want to see as far as bike ped enhancements. Again, we're not doing major construction work at any of these. This is just resurfacing the road. And so we have a new canvas to draw on, and, what should we draw on it? And so I took notes from last time, and I'm going to continue taking notes. I'm happy to share my screen with a map and show locations if that will help. But I really want this to be led by the board. And when I say I don't have much to add, I've of course spent more time thinking about these, but what I haven't done yet is get our public works director and city engineer together and our striping person and develop full staff recommendations for each of these. And so rather than see that as a limitation for our discussion here, I think it's kind of liberating, and it allows you to think about your preferences without being influenced by what I think you can or can't do. And so it will really help inform the discussion that we have at the staff level in the next couple weeks. If you, the ideas that you can share about any of these locations.
That's great. So I think that's the projects that you feel the most strongly about, or you want to talk about the most, the board we can just take turns and talk about which ones we have those thoughts about. Just to clarify, Ben, this is not a case where we can say build a sidewalk. It's
not. And the reason there is that, we have our other pots of money for sidewalk. This is roadway maintenance, and it's a league of order of magnitude different. Chip sealing a roadway is probably 40 or 50 grand a mile, and the sidewalks are close to $1.5 million a mile. And so it's just it's not in the same ballpark. Okay, so even if you looked at that list and you're like, man, they really need sidewalks here, it can't really be part of this discussion today. The sidewalk discussion will be part of a different I'm happy to hear it, and we'll always make note of areas that board members feel strongly about needing sidewalks, because that will inform the decision making when in that decision space, but that is not on the table with these projects necessarily.
Okay, just want to be sure everybody understood that, because when I first joined the board, it's hard when you first start to know what pots of money are used for different things. So for people who are new, hopefully we'll give you some guidance. So I'm gonna let you guys raise your hands. Please, bring up places that you've driven or ridden or walked and feel strongly about. And anybody want to kick off the discussion with a particular group? Ben, do you want to share the list? Maybe trigger people's memory?
Sure. I'm happy to do that.
That way we can all look and just remind everyone of what we're discussing.
Yeah. So are you seeing this list over here?
Yep, I can see the list.
Okay. So the first column here is the street, the from and to are the sections. Classification, again, these differentiate. We have 3 current classes that we use: local, collector, and arterial. We have internal policies to city staff and external policy resolutions, the complete streets resolution, that says that collectors and arterials, we should look at improving, or we must look at improving bike ped conditions when we do any sort of maintenance to the roadway or significant maintenance to the roadway. Again, adding sidewalk, there's a big exemption in the complete streets policy when the cost of the improvement is disproportionate to the cost of the maintenance work that's happening. So sidewalks fall outside of that. But crosswalks are on the table, bike lanes are on the table, creative solutions are on the table. If there's identified traffic calming, again, it's harder on collectors because those are our main bus routes, fire routes, and serve more vehicles, and so we are more limited in what we can do. But again, I open up the discussion kind of, I want people to think creatively about any of these areas. So the areas that I think are potentially of most interest to the board are Missoula Ave. It's not a major street, but it is a major bike ped connector, and it's one that people who live and use the area regularly have strong feelings about. And it's one where the current configuration of a single one-way northbound travel lane with a bike lane on either side of the street is potentially not meeting everyone's needs. There's no designated space for pedestrians, and the deterioration of the asphalt means that even though we symbolically have bike lanes up there, in practice we don't necessarily have them everywhere because of where that's being deteriorated. Now that road is going to get milled and repaved, and streets, we've already walked it and we think that we're able to widen it out in places, but we're dealing with a pretty minimal asphalt. I think there's a pinch point at the north end that is narrower than 20 feet between 2 driveways. And so there's some limits to what we can do up there. So that is one that I'd like board members to pay attention to. Rattlesnake.
Hang on, Ben, 1 second. So would it be helpful to anyone on the board for him to show it like on the Google Streets? Because I know it very well. If you bike a lot up the Rattlesnake, you've probably been on Missoula Avenue. If you haven't biked, you might not know it. Does anyone want to see it on the Google Streets or map? Does
Jesse,
anyone have experience?
My hope was to really quickly identify a handful that might be of interest and then see where the board wants to go.
Okay, well, I'm definitely interested in that one. It is a hugely utilized for bicyclists and pedestrians up the Rattlesnake corridor. I think it is a very important street to think about doing the shared use path idea, which we talked about briefly last time. Mm-hmm. So I want it definitely on the list for further discussion.
Okay. Rattlesnake Drive between Lolo and Creek Crossing, which passes by the school area. That one I think is of interest. Again, a popular with mountain bikers and recreational riders, as well as people going to and from the schools up there, and people who live in the neighborhood. It's kind of the one way in and out that gets you all the way up. Linda Vista and Scott Allen, both in Miller Creek, maybe less not maybe important from a use perspective, but from policy consideration might be worth looking at. Higgins between University and Brooks. So there's already bike lanes there, but how do we approach, how do we approach the intersection if you're northbound at Brooks? Can we do that in a way that makes more sense and positions bicyclists better to cross in front of Hellgate High School and then keep heading north on Higgins? Is there something we can do there? And then West Spruce between Orange and Scott Street. That's a location that I'd like the board to weigh in on. And then North Russell from West Broadway north to the railroad tracks. And 3rd Street from Orange to the railroad tracks. And Mount Avenue and North Avenue between Johnson and Russell. Those are the ones that I think are most important. So I'm going to highlight those just so that we keep an eye on them.
All right, I'd like to add High Park to that list.
Okay.
And then in addition, the streets that surround CS Porter. So that would be North 26th and West Central. Basically, they're boxing around CS Porter Middle School.
Sure. Okay, those are the ones. So where do you want to start, Jesse, or does anyone feel strongly about where we start?
I think we should try to do it by neighborhood area. So let's talk about all the ones that are nearby each other and then kind of go from there, if that's okay.
Let's start at CS Porter then and work west to east, left to right across the city.
I think that sounds great.
Okay. So I'm going to share a different screen now. I'm going to share the map so we're all on the same page looking at the same thing. So here is CS Porter, Central Avenue, 26th, and North Avenue. These are all on the mill and pave and overlay, and then chip seal after that. And so I guess I'm curious, none of these are collectors in this area. And unfortunately, this overhead map doesn't show how the recent MCPS changes impacted the school, but there's a new kind of road that comes out this way that parents kind of swing in and drop off, or maybe buses use it. I'm not exactly sure, but this connection is now more formalized and is used by the school onto North Avenue.
So I drove by there today during school release, and the entire box area is just full of parents and kids on bikes and kids walking and people everywhere. And there's great sidewalks on 26th. The majority of the seems like the kids getting, out of school is on Central, like Central and 26 seems to be sort of the hub. And the streets are not in good shape, so I'm glad that they're getting done. It's hard to tell from here, and because of it being winter and there were just cars parked every place all around that whole box, it's hard for me to tell if there are bike lanes. I mean,
there are not on any of those 3 streets.
And so is that something that we could, because there were a lot of kids on bikes leaving the school. I mean, there's the sidewalk for the kids walking right around the school. Central Avenue in particular, because it links CS Porter with Big Sky, is a huge bikeway in both directions. Kids are biking from Big Sky, toward Reserve, and then kids are biking from CS Porter down Central, into the neighborhood after school. And so it worries me not to have bike lanes. I don't know if there's room for them, but there's a lot of kids on bikes.
Okay, Central is our neighborhood greenway, and we are, again, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So Central, as it continues east across Reserve, eventually there will be there's city plans to move this signal that's kind of in the middle of the block here between Kent and Central, to move it down to Central and maybe change it from a full signal to what's called a hawk signal, which would be more responsive to the pedestrian rather than have to, it still has to time correctly with the South Avenue signal, but it's not as much delay for the driver as a full signal, and so it can be more responsive to the pedestrian. So getting across at Central will be easier in the future, and then that connects across through the new MRL Park with this new crossing of the railroad tracks for non-motorized users, and then that gets you all the way over, and it becomes the Kent Greenway in this neighborhood. Gets you across Russell. We have plans to cross Brooks and continue all the way to the university. So that's a major, we see that as a major east-west connection that doesn't have all of the intersection pieces in place yet, but it's one that we're working towards. So if one of these streets were to have bike lanes or some bike facility on it, I could see Central being the one.
Yeah, I think that would be, I would support that. I think there are a lot of kids who are biking on that road without without continuous sidewalks as they head west, and definitely no bike lanes. And if there's space for them, I think it would be great if when the road's redone, if there can be bike lanes added. I saw, did he measure? I couldn't tell if he measured and it was okay or not, but when he comes back, we'll find out. Anyone else have comments on that area? And it's not a part of town that some people have experienced, but is if you live on the west side and been around Big Sky High School and the Fort Missoula complex, NCS Porter, it's very busy during school drop off and after school and during games and events at the school. It's a very, very, very busy street. Central Avenue is.
Yeah, I'm just looking Jessica, at the idea of the bike lanes, and again, I'm thinking back to the what they did on Russell, and I don't know if there'd be the right of way available to do it, but the idea of having or if there's a bus route there, I don't think there is on Central. The way they did I think what they call them is raised. Hey, hi, little buddy. Raised bike lanes there. Ben, I just brought up the idea of, instead of your standard bike lane on Central along there, the east-west, of trying to do the kind of raised bike lanes, keeping them sort of as a sidewalk adjunct, like happened on the new section of Russell. So that, I think that for me, for the kids to be safer with kind of how they get distracted and whatever, and not as easily seen by motorists, I think to try to get the elevated bike lanes would be better than having the on-street bike lanes for that part of the street.
I mean, I think ideally that would be great. I don't know if there's funding. It would be interesting to hear what your view on that, Ben, is. Is that an option in this scenario?
Probably not with a mill and chip seal, but it's something that I'm certainly going to bring up, and one that we will look at for longer term. Again, especially, I think that the time to do something like that level of new construction would happen when we do the intersection improvement at Reserve, and then we continue the facility along Central.
Gotcha. I guess philosophically, I feel like if we have enough room, should the streets that surround a school block all have bike lanes? I would say yes, they should. Is the most important street Central? Then I would say yes. But I feel like I think it's important to have bike lanes around schools because we know the kids are going to be riding their bikes. Can Nathan say yes? That's your son's name?
That is his name, and I'm sure
Yes.
he can see you. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody wave at Nathan. Ready?
Is everyone waving at you?
Hi. I don't know if he can see us or not. All right. Anyway, anybody else want to comment about how they feel about the bike lanes?
How far down are we talking? It's a couple blocks, right?
It's
Just-
only this one block between
Just
Reserve and
one.
26th.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of feel like if you don't do it when you have the chance to do it, if there's room, then around a school, then when are you going to do it? I mean, I just think if there's room, there should be bike lanes on all of the roads that surround a school, with Central being the most important, but they're all important because they all are where the kids live who are going to be riding bikes to the school.
Is there parking on the street Central and 26 that is right adjacent to the borderline of the school property? It looks like there's no, I don't see cars parked there. I just was wondering if there's parking spaces. I would hope not.
It seemed like everyone's on street parking on all sides. That was my impression today when I drove by during the school release. And I mean, you know, most of those people are just there temporarily and then they're going to leave with their children. But there's a lot of parked cars, but it doesn't seem like an extremely narrow street. So I think there should be bike lanes around schools if there is room to do it.
I agree with that. I'm wondering about the park. I mean, when there's drop off and pick up, and whether that's changed at all, because at least when I've been over there, it's like a lot of people coming in from Reserve. So Jesse, do you have any thoughts on like how those bike lanes would work? Like what if, or I'm just thinking for the school, the bike lane on Central is maybe not as useful as like the through bike lane for Central, if that makes sense. Like I think there's a lot of reason to do it for that greenway. And I'm just wondering about the pickup and drop off and how that might work when people are.
So what I see is the kids come across Reserve Street at that signal that's at the midpoint of the school, you know, walking or riding their bikes and using that signal to stop the cars. Then they ride the sidewalk down Reserve Street and then they turn right and then they enter the school off of Central, you know, at that point. And so there's all these kids on the sidewalk turning right in the mornings at least. And then in the afternoons, I don't know if they would ride down Central and then cross or if they would stay on the sidewalk. I'm just not really sure about that. As far as, I mean, we don't know when we'll get money for the neighborhood greenways, but if we have the choice in putting a bike lane in, I feel like we should choose to do it if we have the chance.
I hear you loud and clear, and my thought there is that I will work with the school. I'll contact the school to find out what they see as the patterns of movement, and I'll work with other staff to try and develop a solution that best addresses that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. All right, you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think in this, as we move east or west to east, the next one that I wanted to address was North Avenue between Johnson and Russell. So this is technically considered a collector. There's a signal at Russell that just goes one block until it runs into the back of the post office. There's a trail crossing with the Bitterroot Trail. Grant Street is a neighborhood greenway. Garfield is also hypothetically a neighborhood greenway, at least the block between Central and Kent is, because it's how we get from Central up to Kent, which has this crossing through the center median of Russell. And then Johnson is a collector, which is, again, per our policies, may one day have bike lanes, although with Grant as a greenway and with Schilling as a greenway and with on-street parking potentially being a premium on Johnson, I could see not getting bike lanes on John. I could see it being similar to Phillips in the west side, where there just isn't room for bike lanes with how the neighbors are currently using and want to use that street. So this to me is a connection. One of the issues that I wanted to help solve is how do we get people intuitively and safely from the Bitterroot Trail to the Grant Street Greenway. And so I was looking at a bi-directional bike facility on North Avenue to help do that. And while it might be neat, it might work well, it might be easier to convince people to use, I think that still the safest and easiest way to make that connection is to send people up to Kensington and use this dead end street that no one drives or very few people drive on as the connection to get there. But again, I'm all ears. If the Bike Ped Board has different recommendations about North Avenue here, then I'd like to hear what they are.
Okay, Jean, got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I could have put just thumbs up on my screen for what Ben just said. I think the Kensington obviously is a lot lower traveled and lower speed area to connect the Bitterroot Trail to get over to Greenway on Grant. So I think that's definitely the preferable way to go for both convenience and safety.
Thanks. Yeah, I support what you said, Jean. I think that it makes more sense to just use that earlier, safer connection.
So am I hearing support then that if staff went to, so I guess a procedural piece that I didn't mention before is because our complete streets policy requires us to look at these things, we're also required to go to council if we are not going to make these improvements on streets that are functionally classified as collectors. So am I hearing that the Bike Ped Board would support a complete streets exemption for North Avenue, that we say we're not going to stripe bike lanes on North Avenue?
I mean, I would support it. Do you want me to do like all those in favor?
No, I don't think we can do a specific motion. I'm just looking for a nod of heads. I'm going to, again, the way that we're going to deal with this list is we're just discussing at these meetings now. And then probably the April meeting, I'm going to bring a kind of written list of Bike Ped Board, showing what the staff recommendation is and what the Bike Ped Board recommendation is, and highlighting places where there's where those are maybe in conflict with each other, and that's what the board will vote on. I'm just making sure I'm getting a general sense that this is the direction that staff is, that you're not going to be shocked when I come back and show you the staff recommendation is to not include bike lanes on North Avenue.
Okay.
Sorry. So Ben, you're saying if we decide, yeah, we like the connection on Kensington, then the bike lanes would disappear from North Avenue entirely?
We think so. On-street parking is more and more utilized on the south side of North Avenue with the relocation of the emergency shelter to this building, and the industrial uses nearby and large driveway laydowns don't make bike lanes super appealing there. And we're not sure what the connection is. I mean, Russell Street, this section of Russell does not have bike lanes, and Johnson currently does not have bike lanes. And we're not proposing them west of Johnson necessarily on North Avenue. So I don't know. I don't know what purpose bike lanes on North Avenue would serve. Again, I'm all ears if the board members feel strongly about that. I'll certainly discuss that with other staff members, but this is my current thinking.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I think that you've got some people who are thinking the same.
Okay.
What's next?
Next, continuing to go west to east, we're going to go to Mount Avenue. So I believe the section of Mount that is going to be chip sealed is from Russell all the way to Higgins.
Wow.
And so this section includes, I consider this the 3-lane section, meaning that there are 2 travel lanes. I'm going to go down Street View for this. Meaning that there are 2 travel lanes and a 2-way left turn lane. And so I think that there's some discussion to be had here about converting this away from a 3-lane, and you'd be able to add, the street is wide enough that we'd be able to add parking to one side of the street and have bike lanes on both sides of the street and no 2-way left turn lane.
I certainly support that. I bike that all the time and I would support that. Kip has his hand up. Go ahead, Kip.
Basically just ditto. I've biked that a lot and I hate riding in traffic there. I support the bike lanes both ways.
Thanks, Kip. That's great. Yeah. So Gene also has his hand up. What would you like to say, Gene?
Yeah, I like the idea of getting rid of the central. I talked with Bob Giordano about this, getting rid of the central left turn lane. Again, I use the street a lot, and I ride in the lane. I mean, being up against the curb is just too crazy because just people come way too close. So I take the lane. A lot of people use the central turn lane. It's illegal to do it, but they do it, and I'm okay with it to pass me. So my question is, if it went with just 2 lanes, now you've got somebody waiting to make a left turn, and to their right then is a bike lane. So when you're down to just the 2 lanes, Ben, let's just go with the idea that there's no bike lanes, just we're getting rid of the central turn lane. How wide is each of those 2 lanes?
If there's no bike lane,
yeah,
and there's just a double yellow in the middle of the street,
right,
we have about 20 feet on each side.
Okay, so
instead, what we would do is we would shift the double yellow. If we got rid of the 2-way left turn lane, we would shift the double yellow to one side or the other. We'd probably put parking along the north side. So instead, we would have about 16 feet of space to the south of the double yellow, and we'd have about 24 feet of space to the north of the double yellow to include a 10-foot travel lane, a 6-foot bike lane, and an 8-foot parking lane.
And then this is consistent across Mount as you head west. That is what Mount has. As you continue west, it has 2-lane traffic with the double yellow. It has bike lanes. It has on-street parking on both sides, one side. I can't remember.
Only that from Eaton to Reserve. So there would still be these blocks from Eaton to Russell, which would not have bike lanes.
Yeah.
And that's only because that hasn't been resealed, re-chip sealed in a little while. But this would certainly be the impetus. If bike lanes existed here and on the other side, it would be a good reason to come through and chip seal that one within the next year or 2 and get bike lanes there as well.
And having the 2 lanes of travel would be consistent across the whole of Mount, which also is, I think, kind of reassuring to drivers. It's the same type of road.
Something also to keep in mind is that the roadway does not widen up at the intersections, at the major intersections, but we do need the multiple turn lanes at the signalized intersections. And so the bike lanes would go away. You know, we wouldn't be able to bring them all the way to the intersection, we don't think.
I would still support having them. I mean, there's a lot of intersections that are like that. So, all right, anyone else want to comment on this one so we can keep moving through?
One more question. So when you get east of Brooks, the Mount Avenue doesn't have a 2-way left turn lane, but it does allow parking on both sides of the street. Parking would have to be removed from one side of the street in that section to add bike lanes. Does the board have a recommendation of which side of the street to think about removing parking from?
Okay, Bob has his hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like that's 40 feet, and we've done several streets in Missoula, Bancroft being one, Brooks near Rose Park, where parking was removed on one side, and you have a decent bike lane on both sides, and parking on one side, just 2 travel lanes. In this instance, I think having buffered bike lanes and no parking as much of that stretch as possible, especially where there's no parking already and no one's going to lose anything, that it's really time we give people biking the most safe, pleasant experience possible. And as we've seen with bike lanes between parking and travel lanes, it's just with doors opening and snow and ice, it's really difficult. So I would strongly advocate that we really consider not adding parking anywhere and even removing it in a little bit. If we have to, having 2 travel lanes and 2 buffered bike lanes. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Gene has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to pretty much reinforce what Bob said. In riding along there's very few blocks where on-street parking is utilized to any reasonable extent at all. It's very seldom I see more than 1 car per block. So I think I would say, you know, and again, the squeaky wheel getting the grease from people saying, "Oh my God, you can't take away my parking." I think they have, based on what I've seen, they have fairly thin ice to stand on. And what I was talking with Bob about yesterday was the idea of when you get your bike lane to the intersections you're going to want to have, because I think drivers are going to do it anyhow. They're going to go into if somebody's waiting for a left turn, they don't have the center turn lane anymore. Cars are going to want to go around them to the right of the left turning car, and they're going to enter the bike lane. And I think we should encourage them to do that safely, and therefore change to the bike lanes, put some dashing in beforehand, so that cars are going to tend to kind of ease their way in to go around cars that are waiting to make a left turn. I think that'll still be safe for the cyclists. It'll I think, give a clear indication for cars that, you know, they're not being illegal to carefully go around a car that's waiting to turn.
Okay, thank you, Jean, for the comment. James has his hand up next.
Yes, excuse me. I would just like to say, going east of Brooks along Mount, if there was going to be parking removed from that road, that stretch of the road, the north side would probably be the most appropriate, and I'm much more sympathetic to the people who may be occupying parking areas, street side parking areas on the south side, because there's many homes that are very dense and have very little parking options there, and also because they're on the same grid. Mount Avenue is running the same direction as the grid of their neighborhood, whereas the homes north of Mount Avenue have these perpendicular and diagonal cross streets, which allow for more parking opportunities than I believe the south side does. So it seems like if you're going to remove one side of parking only, the north side would be preferable.
Okay, I support what James said. That's been my experience in observing that street, is the south side has way more people parked on it than the north side anyway. I feel like the engagement with the community on the Scott Street Bridge bike lanes, where you had to eliminate parking on one side and you asked the neighborhood which side they preferred, and then you took their feedback and then moved forward with it, is a good example. I think in an ideal world, we would not have to keep on street parking, but I do think that the reality is a lot of those people on the south side are parking on the street. Bob, do you still have your hand up?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Anyone else have comments that I missed? Okay. All right. Let's move on, because we got a bunch more places to look.
Yep. High Park Way. You said you wanted this on the table. So here we're going to look at striping bike lanes. There's currently no parking allowed, as far as I know, on High Park Way. There are bus stops on it. And the question here, I guess, is do we do bike lanes in both directions, or we do a bike lane in the uphill with a sharrow in the downhill direction? Are there preferences there?
Okay, I just drove this today. It's super curvy, steep road with poor visibility and no sidewalks. And so my suggestion is that the bike lane be on the uphill side. And what I suspect will happen is that it will become a de facto multi-use trail for people who are going to walk on that road. And so I think that's it's very narrow. I mean, I don't know measurement wise if you could do 2 full bike lanes, but if I had to choose, I would say the uphill side.
We do have room for both, and we have room for pretty wide bike lanes on both. I'm getting about 35 feet at all of the just kind of spot check locations.
Then I would say do both, because there's no sidewalk, and people walk that road. And so at least it would give people a buffer too. I know that it's not best practice, but it, like, in common sense, what seems like it would be a nice thing to do. So that's the only comment that I would say. Anybody else have a thought on that? High Parkway. Okay, I don't see any hands up, so I think we should move on.
Okay, next we're going to go to the north side of town, or more towards Russell Street here. Talk about North Russell between Broadway and the railroad tracks. So as soon as you get north of Phillips, we get bike lanes on street. Maybe let's see. Maybe it's Howell in the northbound direction, but we have them in the southbound at least until Phillips, if not further south. Oh no, I guess this is Maple and then Howell, so they're a half block offset, and we want to try and find a way to bring those bike lanes all the way down to the intersection with Russell. One of the interesting things now is that with the Russell construction project, I wonder if there's going to be street view footage. Oh, there kind of is. So when you're in the bike lane right here, there is a little bit of an offset, and there's a sharrow right on the ground, right where a bike lane would be. And I ride this is kind of near my house. I ride it with some regularity. I've never felt pinched by a driver, but they're way offset, because I don't know if this overhead is going to show it well, but they are in this lane, and they have to come, like, if they're going straight, that puts them like riding into the sidewalk right here. So they need to move over to the left quite a bit when they get that green light. And so that's one of the thoughts is, do we start a bike lane here, and might that actually help communicate to drivers that, hey, you need to move over to the left a little bit more. And then, yeah, what in this area, it's when you get north of Maple and Howell, the street is wide enough that there's actually parking and bike lanes on both sides. And it's not even a big door zone threat, because even the parking lane is wide, but the road is, it's 8.5 foot parking and a 6 foot bike lane. But the road narrows south of Phillips, and so it's a much narrower cross section here. So again, we'd have to remove parking from one side of the street at least. And what is the board recommendation about how we bring those bike lanes down?
All right, thoughts from the board, experiences riding on that area? I don't personally have a lot of experience riding in that spot. I feel like where the road is that narrow with businesses on the left, and you have lots of streets that are spurring off, is there a great need for on-street parking? Because I feel like when I look at that, it seems as if there's a lot of east-west streets that would offer parking opportunities. And on the west side, there's a lot of businesses. And so if we could eliminate all on-street parking and just do the bike lanes, I think that would be my observation. All right, I don't see anybody else's comments. So
I'm not seeing much utilization in this area. So yeah, I think that's certainly possible. Any other comments on this one?
nope, I don't see anybody else. We'll move on to the next.
Okay, West Spruce Street. This is the section from the roundabout at Scott to Orange, kind of the gap in Spruce Street. Staff is currently working on a plan to show bike lanes in this area that would remove parking from the north side of the street and keep it on the south side. And then this block here, where there is currently, there's bike lane on the south side of the street and there's parking on the north side, we would actually switch this and allow parking on the south side of the street, remove it from the, just to keep the consistency through there. And so there would be parking on the south side of the street for the length of this. And the reason is that it's the least impact to the amount of parking spaces that would be removed from the neighborhood, because there's more driveways on the north side and other locations that are challenging. And the south side has higher utilization with these residential properties on this block. And then the hospital, one of the frequent complaints we hear at the staff level is from people that park here and want to access the hospital. They're not crossing in the crosswalk. They're walking into this driveway. They're walking out from between parked cars. People turning into this driveway are blocking the view of people crossing in the crosswalk. There's all sorts of things going on that we think we might be able to mitigate a little bit if the parking was just on the south side of the street.
Well, I think I support that. That sounds like it makes total sense. Gene has his hand up.
Yeah, Ben, is that considered, I'm thinking about the width of the bike lane, especially if you have a high turnover area for parking. People going to the hospital, there's not room in the parking lot, and they don't want to go down in the garage because it's too dark. So I'm a little bit concerned about if we only have a 5-foot bike lane instead of 6 or 6.5 next to these parked cars, and there's a fair rate of people coming in and out of those parked cars. It concerns me a little bit about incidents of bikes getting doored.
It would not be a bare minimum 5-foot bike lane. It would be at least 6, and parking would be at least 8. And it's possible that the combined, that the bike lane might be 6.5 and the parking might be 8.5. So it's possible that the combined width would be 15 feet between parking and the bike lane. But I'm not sure in the specifics. But in these situations, regardless of the location, we put as much room as we can into the parking side bike lane, and we keep the curbside bike lane down closer to the minimums, 5 or 5.5, and then we get to 6 or 6.5 in the parking side bike lane.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have comments or experiences in that area? Okay, let's move on to the next.
Okay. The next, I believe we're into the Rattlesnake now. Missoula Ave and Rattlesnake Drive are the only two that I have left on this list. So let's do Missoula Ave first, since we hit it first. So this is Missoula Ave again. So some things of note here. We'll start down at the bottom. With the Van Buren construction project, we constructed a shared use path for 1 block to connect to Holly Street here, which gets you over to Jackson, which is our neighborhood greenway. So then because what a lot of people do is they ride up Jackson to avoid busy Van Buren. They come down Holly, and then they gut on this narrow sidewalk. So rather than prohibit that behavior or make it challenging, we wanted to make it safer. And so we built the shared use path along Van Buren here for 1 block to get you up to Missoula Ave, where it then takes you and then connects to the on-street bike lanes here. So you notice Missoula Ave has a bike lane in the northbound direction, a travel lane in the northbound direction, a double yellow, and then a bike lane in the southbound direction. And again, the challenge is here. It looks great right here, and then you go up further and the bike lane starts to deteriorate at people's driveways. You go up even further at the Bugby Nature Preserve, and it's just encroached way into the space. This even looks better than it did. But look, see, there's no usable bike lane there at times. So again, we're gonna try and blade this out as much as possible when Public Works comes in to resurface it. There's some concern that might, and we've heard speeding complaints from neighbors. We've also heard people say, leave the street alone. We don't want to do anything to it. But water and drainage is a major problem. There's ponding and puddling. The asphalt's in really rough shape. There's no lights up there. It's becoming a hazard for all modes, and it's something that we're going to address. And so now the question is, what's the best way to address it? City staff looked at the potential for doing a shared use path on the west side of the street, and then the drive lane on the east side of the street. If we go the route of kind of calling it a full shared use path and trying to adhere to all of the national design standards for what a shared use path next to a roadway would be, we really don't have the width to do it. And then we start going to look at, well, what is the actual need? We want to provide a space for people to be comfortable, but Missoula Ave is so low volume that we might not actually need all of that separation. And so one of the thoughts that we had, there's another design guide that we looked at called the Small Town and Rural Multimodal Network Design Guide that has some suggestions for basically just striping a pedestrian area on one side of the street. And that could serve as a pedestrian space and potentially southbound bicycle space, and then putting the travel lane here and putting a sharrow in the travel lane. And we thought that might actually have some traffic calming effects. And then just to ensure that speeds stay low, we're even considering speed humps along the route in the driving lane. And then we would put a handful of delineators at the speed humps so that right adjacent to the pedestrian lane, so that drivers aren't swerving around the speed hump into the pedestrian lane to slalom up the road. So that's kind of our latest thought, is instead of a full width shared use path scenario, kind of a 7 to 8 foot pedestrian lane on the west side of the street, a 10 plus foot travel lane on the east side of the street. That plus meaning just that we would stripe it at 10, but there would be a little bit of extra asphalt room where it kind of crumbles into people's yards. And then a sharrow in that travel lane. So that's the current thought. Again, our traffic volumes here are about 300 cars a day. So it's one of the lowest volume streets in town from motor vehicles.
Okay, we got lots of people wanting to comment on this one. So Gene, you had your hand up first.
I like the idea of the Sharrow's Bend. I mean, this is essentially one of these streets, based on what you just mentioned about the traffic volume, and that it's the one direction headed up the elevation there. It's really a place where you could say cars are guests. You got low volume, hopefully low speeds, and I think maybe rather than any kind of speed tables, maybe using for traffic calming the chicanes, where you kind of make them shift a little bit right and left as they go up to be a traffic calming thing. That would be a little bit less intrusive. And maybe on the southbound side for the bikes, then have like a little shared use path. And for the upstream traffic directed side, again, just have the sharrow and put in the traffic calming measures to keep the speeds down around 20 miles an hour if we can do that.
Thanks, Jean. Jessica had her hand up next.
I like the idea of something that kind of fits the rural area a little bit better, and the pedestrian area seems like it'd be nice here. It might change the behavior of drivers a little bit more. especially up in the Rattlesnake.
Thanks, Jessica. Anybody else have comments on this? I like the idea too of the rural, marking and the speed calming. And I have seen people walking sort of in the dirt over on the east side. It would be nice if there was, more of a place where pedestrians felt at home. I think bikes already feel at home because I've seen maybe one car in 12 years of riding there. You do feel like the bikes and pedestrians sort of own that little area. So Bob has his hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Just real quickly, I'm a co-chair of the Rattlesnake Transportation Committee, and we're a subcommittee of the neighborhood councils, both lower and upper. We're wrapping up data collection and analyzation of a transportation plan for the whole Rattlesnake Valley, and Missoula Avenue scored really quite high, not as high as Duncan, Greeno, Rattlesnake, Van Buren, but right on the heels. So we'd like to stay engaged with Bike Ped Board, and I talk to Ben about this street quite often. Speeding's been one of the biggest issues. Not many cars, but it only takes one driver to go way too fast, and now parents are really concerned. And these all sound like great ideas, so looking forward to coming up with something by the summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. All right, I don't see anyone else's hand. Shall we do our last site, which is on Van Buren, I believe, or the main?
Rattlesnake Drive, yep.
Rattlesnake.
All right, thank you. And so we're looking at resurfacing from Lolo Street to all the way up to Creek Crossing. And so that there's always been an informal bike lane in the shoulder area here that has a pinch point at bulb outs right at the school that were constructed to minimize the pedestrian crossing right at the school. Those preclude making these bike lanes. And so the question is do we scrape the bulb outs and actually formalize these as bike lanes? This has been a complaint. I receive this complaint a couple times a year from bike riders about those bulb outs. I don't know. Again, if we were building bulb outs today, we would not build them where they are for that reason. But it's the way that they were put in at the time. And so, yeah, the question is do we scrape them? I think there's some, because the stretch is long enough, again, we can't build sidewalk the full length of the way, but we could probably do a little curb work around this intersection to try and make these formally bike lanes.
Bob, I think he has his hand up again. I'm not sure. Was that you, Bob, or leftover?
Leftover, sorry.
That's okay. Kip, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Is the point of those bulb outs just to protect pedestrians wanting to cross? Is that the idea?
Yep, it's to make them more visible because they're closer to the and it narrows the crossing distance, so there's less road for them to cross. That's the point of them.
I'm wondering if there's like enough space, because I've written down that a bunch and I hate those little things. And I'm just wondering if there's enough space where you could just break down the concrete, but then maybe have like a little reflective thing. So it's like kind of sticking out, but then bikes could go in between the car lane still and have the bike lane, but just have like some kind of, visual marker just to show that there's a crosswalk there as well. I don't know.
Okay, Bob, do you have your
hand
up again? Thanks, Kip.
Yes, this might have had the most comments of anything in the Rattlesnake plan, over 50 comments about these bulb outs. The intent is amazing, shorten the pedestrian crossing. We can't lose sight of that, but it does create a bit of a hazard. What Kip suggests, I think, has a lot of merit that Ben, your office could look into, bringing a bikeway behind the bulb out, but that is challenging with not hitting curbs, with drainage. Another idea that just came to me looking at this would be trim the bulb outs back and put a small pedestrian refuge in the middle, which would help pedestrians and probably calm traffic right at that spot. That's it.
I like that idea. So I would support having the refuge in the center and carving out the bulb outs. What you can see in one of the pictures also is that the pavement is in terrible shape. And so when the bikes come upon that and they have to rejoin the traffic area, the pavement is really yucky and there's maybe like a drainage thing. Anyway, it's not a great place for cyclists as they're making their way in. It's the pavement's all disrupted, so it's very I don't know, it feels kind of shaky when you're doing it. Okay, Jessica Doherty Goodburn has her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking for a chat. I have to jump off, but thank you. We'll see you.
Okay, good. Thanks for coming.
Thanks,
Take
Jessica.
care. Kip, did you have another comment?
Oh, sorry. No.
Oh, that's okay. No, I just want to make sure everybody's heard. I think those are all great thoughts. It's nice to hear that the neighborhood recognizes it as an issue and would support, you know, some creative solutions to that. Well, you guys, we almost did it within our 1 hour time slot. So
yeah, can I just have one more minute to talk about process and procedure on this, Jesse, to prepare folks for next month? So this has been super helpful discussion. I'm going to take everything that you said and synthesize it into a list, and I'm going to meet with staff and talk about what we think we want to do. And so then for the March meeting, I'm going to bring a list of what the staff is going to do, or what we're planning to do, and then what I believe that I heard the Bike Ped Board's recommendations to be. We're going to discuss that at the March meeting. And then in April, we're going to make changes to that based on the discussion at the March meeting. And then in April, we're going to vote, the board's going to vote on a formal staff recommendation to the city on this, which will get present, which a board chair or delegate will present to, presumably to, well, we'll send the letter to staff. And then if there's major disagreement at the staff level, then the board might want to present that to council.
excellent. That sounds great.
In the past few years, we've gotten really close alignment between what staff is recommending and what the board is recommending, and I don't know that we've needed to really make examples of anybody at council, but it's still it's there on the table if the board feels that city is somehow not adhering to our policies or something like that, then you know that option is there. But yeah, I think that we'll get to a pretty strong set of recommendations that will help us a lot. And just this conversation today will help inform the discussions that I have with the engineering and other with engineers and other planners about what we can get done here.
Excellent. Well, I thought it was a great discussion. Lots of exciting projects and opportunities to make our city be even better than it is for biking and walking. The next meeting will be in March, the first Tuesday at 3 p.m. And just to remind everyone that it's time for the planning process for Bike Month. And so really starting to think through what your ability to advocate and help support that would be. And then in addition, looking for small grants that we can apply for. You know, board members could bring those if they find them. City staff could bring those. I think that would be great. Anyone else have any other announcements before we adjourn the meeting?
Yes, next month also, Catherine Auger from Missoula in Motion would like to come and present the annual report from Missoula in Motion to showcase what they did this past year. They had some challenges with COVID, but they also had some successes as well. And I know that she's looking forward to sharing that with the board.
Well, I think it'll be important for her to be there if we're discussing Bike Month. She'll be a great resource. So that's a nice accident or happy planning as far as that goes. Any other announcements from anybody? All right, it was awesome. It's great to see you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. It's 5:06. I hope everyone has an excellent February. All right, see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.